today we are going to talk about the subject of covenant. And we're going to go immediately to Genesis chapter 15. If you've been with me a little while, you know what happens in Genesis 15. This is when God makes the blood covenant with Abram. And he says, he tells Abram to cut a bunch of animals in pieces. And apparently there's a certain amount of significance to which animals he uses and the way that he does it. And he cuts these animals in half. And then, as I understand, the covenant practice is that the two parties who are joining into this covenant, just like in blood brother, when you cut your hand and you put your hands together in the same kind of a way, you're walking through this blood. And what you're saying is, this is what we are agreeing to. And if one of us breaks this covenant, then it's over for that person, and that person is going to join these animals in death. And so you both walk through blood to solidify and make solid that contract and that covenant. So in Genesis chapter 15, we've read all of this before, and you know the story. I'm going to jump down to verse 18, and he says, "In the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto your children have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river Euphrates." So, this is the agreement that God made with Abram, was if you'll make this covenant with me, since you've walked in blood with me. And you guys remember the other part of the story. We'll get to that in just a second. But because you've made this covenant with me, this land is all your land. I will be your God, and I will take care of you in this land. This is yours. I give it to you. Now, the thing about having land, as everyone knows, if you have land, you have to defend that land. You have to make sure that people can't take that land from you. And in this case, there were people living there, and God basically was saying, I have rejected them because they have rejected me, and I have chosen you because you chose me. We've walked in blood, and I am now giving you their land because they don't want to have anything to do with me. There's a couple of things that we need to look at here or think about that I think are really important. Why didn't God just wipe out all of those Canaanite people and then let Abram just walk in there and take it over? He didn't do that. God doesn't really do things the way that most people, because of their paganistic background, think that he does. What God does, I'll just skip forward for you here. God works through us. His covenant is with us. And what he does in the earth, he does through us. You don't really ever see God just going in and just wiping a place out just because he decided he wanted to wipe it out. God, generally speaking, works through us, with the exception of the flood and Sodom and Gomorrah. And the reason for that was because the entire world, if you read in the story of Noah, the entire world was in depravity and sin and had rejected God completely, and the earth basically just spit people out. So the next verse we're going to look at is Luke chapter 22. In Luke 22, Jesus said, "This cup is the New Testament." That word testament is another word for covenant. This is the new contract in my blood, which is shed for you. Jesus is pointing to the Passover celebration, and he's pointing to this glass of wine, and he's saying, this is my new agreement with you. This is another time where God is pointing out that he's making this agreement, a covenant, a testament. The Old Testament points to Jesus all the way through, but Jesus is the fulfillment of that testament, that covenant, that agreement. We've been working for 4,000 years to get up to this point where Jesus says, I'm going to fix what Adam broke. But it took all of this time to get that done. Here's another example that we can go to of God doesn't do things the way the pagans think he does. He doesn't just wave a magic wand and say, okay, it's done. He says, I'm going to come as one of you and die for you. But to get that done, it's going to take me 4,000 years to get that done. Because he had to work through men and work through our choices and the agreements that he made. This is so hard for people to understand because God is truth. God is justice. He does things right. He doesn't cut corners. I don't know how many more ways I can say it. God is not the magic wand kind of a God that people think he is. He has to do things the right way. He can't just wave his hand and say, okay, I mean, if he could do that, why didn't he make Abel, who died by the hand of Cain, the Messiah? He could have said, okay, well, I decide Abel's going to be the Messiah. And so Abel died, and so his blood cleanses all of mankind. Okay, ollie ollie oxen free, it's all done. That's not how that works. God worked through these covenants and these agreements and contracts all the way through history down to where he could make a covenant with a woman and say to her, I'm going to make your son the Messiah. And Mary said, all right, I'll agree to that. I'll do it. That's a covenant. That's an agreement. That's a contract. We have to understand that God works in and through the processes of this world. He doesn't just change the rules just because he's God. All right, so I have said some things I know that are going to really upset a lot of people. But some of you are seeing, hey, wait a second, the Bible's starting to make sense now. And that's the people I'm talking to. The people that I upset, I hope I made you mad enough that you'll go get in your Bible and try to prove me wrong. That would be perfect. All right, so God bless you. I will see you tomorrow, and we'll talk some more about covenants. What goes up must come down.